Now, I'm going to be honest here. Her resume was nothing short of impressive. She had founded a popular company that, traded millions in product-based business. And of course, this type of figures, it makes you sit up and really pay attention. And as someone like myself who has been in £10,000 rooms, £20,000 rooms, figuratively speaking, and I'm trying to get to those £50,000 rooms, again, figuratively speaking. But if we're objective here, she had been in bigger rooms, much bigger rooms, figuratively and probably literally speaking. We're talking about like the £1,000,000 rooms. And I actually, when I was listening to her, I wanted to pick her brain, dissect her strategies, and actually understand the mindset from someone who had, built something to that large scale. Right, so my name's Nathan and I have dyspraxia, and I gave a guest talk at a conference. So let me tell you about it. So I stood near the stage and my red shoes tapping against the floor, and I was waiting for my turn to speak, right? But before me, there were two speakers lined up, each with their own story to tell, their own experience to share. So, because I'm curious, I was eager to listen, because every story can carry a lesson. And tonight, I was ready to learn. It's always important to be a student. So let's talk about speaker one. I'm not going to mention people's names, but I'll just explain my experiences. And everything here is said within the context of speaking complimentary. So speaker one, I'm going to call them the charismatic storyteller. So the first speaker strode onto the stage and they had like a flamboyant presence and real confidence. His shoes, red, just like mine. That caught my attention immediately. So he had like an aura of someone who knew how to capture an audience, which is important. And the moment he opened his mouth, he really had us engaged. His words, speaking figuratively here, were like brushstrokes on a canvas, painting a picture of struggle, discovery, and of transformation. He spoke about finding passion, or that's how I interpreted it, and that elusive fire inside, and turning something into a tangible business, a livelihood, and ultimately creating a purpose. Again, from my perspective, he didn't just tell a story, he lived it as he spoke. I felt his energy, I felt his joy. It was kind of like, like metaphorically speaking, like standing in a storm but dancing through the raindrops, completely unbothered, because he did disclose some things that were traumatic. Now, he made me think about my own journey and how I found my passion and how I had walked my personal road, stumbling, learning, and growing. It was a great speech, and I thanked him afterwards. So let's move on to speaker number two, and we're going to call this the powerhouse in green. So the second speaker, she was really tall. That really stood out. So I guess you can call it statuesque, and had like a commanding presence, but it was like positive. When I think of commanding, I think of something negative, but this was like positive, and a bright green jacket was like a beacon of confidence. She smiled. She had a very distinctive smile, and it was the kind of smile that showed significant confidence. The confidence was there, but not arrogance, because there is a difference between confidence and arrogance. Now, I'm going to be honest here. Her resume was nothing short of impressive. She had founded a popular company that, traded millions in product-based business. And of course, this type of figures, it makes you sit up and really pay attention. And as someone like myself who has been in £10,000 rooms, £20,000 rooms, figuratively speaking, and I'm trying to get to those £50,000 rooms, again, figuratively speaking. But if we're objective here, she had been in bigger rooms, much bigger rooms, figuratively and probably literally speaking. We're talking about like the £1,000,000 rooms. And I actually, when I was listening to her, I wanted to pick her brain, dissect her strategies, and actually understand the mindset from someone who had, built something to that large scale. Anyway, she spoke with kind of like a quiet power. Like I said, there was no arrogance there, and it was like a balance of humility and authority. She wasn't flashy, but she didn't need to be, and obviously the numbers speak for themselves. I got a sense though that it was not about the money. For her, it was about the journey. So despite her economic success, it felt like it was more about the journey. And let me say as well, Speaker One also, was doing very well monetarily. But for both of them, it didn't feel like it was the money. It felt like it was the drive, the journey, the passion. They felt like real people. So now we're going to speak about Speaker Three, which was me. Now I realized last minute that these people had told a story. Now I had written notes down, I'd had slides, but I realized that I needed to probably insert some of my story and some of my journey. So I was like, okay, I'm going to read from the slides, but I'm also going to interject with things that I'd been through. So, I had the stylish grey jacket and, of course, the red shoes, and I was feeling relatively good. So I stepped on the stage, took a deep breath, and I began. I spoke about my journey, not just the polished version, but the raw, unfiltered truth, or raw for what had been appropriate at the time. Obviously, we have to filter certain things, even when we're speaking in an unfiltered way. So I spoke about my mental health, particularly in relation to my mental health before getting my first grant. I spoke about the battles that lurk behind the scenes of my ambition, and obviously ambition is subjective. I spoke about OPM. I did not plan to speak about OPM, but I did speak about OPM. And for those that are thinking, what's OPM? Well, OPM is other people's money. And to me, the grant process is a symbol of OPM. And I spoke about that intricate dance, that intricate, beautiful dance of funding and sustainability. I spoke about dyspraxia, the challenges it brought, particularly in relation to when I qualified with a postgraduate degree in social work. But due to dyspraxia, this brought significant barriers of driving, and therefore meant that I didn't have a dyspraxia career, because at the time it was relayed to me that you couldn't do social work and not drive, and I wasn't aware of things like access to work and getting funding for reasonable adjustments, etc. So I spoke a bit about that. I spoke about how my experiences with dyspraxia in the work context and in the university context shaped my approach to business and life. And yes, I think I made some awkward comments based on the reaction of the crowd, and maybe a joke landed a little off center. But for what it was worth, I gave them my perspective. I didn't try to be the charismatic storyteller, because that's not who I am. I'm a CEO, but I'm not a powerhouse CEO. I'm just me, flawed, passionate, and real. And I guess the other two were like that as well. And when it's all said and done, I hope people enjoyed it, because I definitely enjoyed it. So anyway, there were some conversations that followed afterwards. I had some really good conversations, and I left the building with a positive feeling. I felt blessed. I felt grateful, because when I thought about it, I thought, the thing about storytelling, it's not just about who speaks the loudest or who has the loudest numbers. Effectively, within that moment, it's about connection. It's about standing in front of a room full of people. Well, this was a large room, but it wasn't full of people. But I guess you understand what I'm saying. A large room with a small amount of people. But the point is that you're telling a genuine story which is your story that only you have. And I guess I realized something that could be seen as profound, that we carry our emotions. Physically carry our emotions, similar emotions, but in different ways. Some store them in passion, letting them fuel their dreams. Others tuck them into numbers, making sense of life through balance sheets and growth charts. And there's nothing wrong with that. And some, like me and others, spill them into words. Maybe some of those words are awkward. Maybe some are imperfect. But they're honest. And maybe, just maybe, that's what makes us human. Now, if you want to support what I'm doing, check the links in the description box. Thank you.